Good morning. This is Bernard Weinstein for the Kane College Oral History Project of the Holocaust Resource Center. I'm interviewing Mrs. Aida Brydbord. And I would like to begin, Mrs. Brydbord, by welcoming you and by asking you to identify the pictures which we have mounted here. Describe what is here.
To identify those pictures on top is my friend in 1938. The top one is a cousin of mine and the middle one is a cousin of mine. I am here in the far left, and on top...
Far left or far right? I'm sorry.
This is, for me, is the far...
Yeah.
Yes. And on top is my best friend. She died in the ghetto. Those two was in the concentration camp. This was also in concentration camp, but she survived. She lives now in the Bronx. For the record, are you able to name these people? Yes. Please, because we want them to have names. Frumke Jaroszewicz, Golda Orlowski, and Sime Mowszowicz, and this is Fego Lazarowicz. Now she's Faye Mostov. She's divorced and a widow. And this is myself. My maiden name was Chaja Czerczewska from home. And here it's the picture. Also, a friend of mine had the picture. He enlarged for me and he sent it. Yes. And on the bottom, it's a picture taken in 1931, I think. It's a school picture from our public school. It was a Polish public school. I am here sitting on the far right, the second from the right. It's sitting. I'm sitting here. My sister on top is Leah Lenz. She lives now in Hartford, Connecticut. And in the middle are three teachers. This was the middle one was Turchakova, was her name. And she was the principal of the school. And after the war, in 1946, when I came back, she was still alive, and she helped me a lot with giving me clothes and food. And then they went back to Poland because our town was Russia, and she didn't want to stay with the Russians. I see. All right, maybe look at the next frame here. The next picture, what we see here, is a picture of my sister. I was from a family of 6 girls. I was the youngest, and she was the second to the oldest. She was married, and this is her daughter. At the time when they were killed, she was 5 years old. On top, it's me and my 2 cousins. One cousin's name was Sarah, and the other one was named Judith. And by the way, this girl's name was also named Sarah. Yes. Sarah Goldenberg. Yes. Thank you. And we have one more. These are pictures from after the war. These are pictures already after the war. This is a picture after I came back from the partisans. Can you point to which one? This one is in 1946. Right. This was made in Pruzhany after the war. Right. This is my daughter Rebecca. Yes. It's named after my mother, and this is myself. Yes. And this is a picture taken in 1951 from Fehrenwald in Germany before we left the United States. Right. And this is a picture from my husband in Berlin, Schlachtensee, with my daughter, by the displaced person camp. And this is a picture, we went to a wedding of our cousin in Berlin. And this is a picture also in Berlin in 1948. Yes. For myself. Okay. We have covered all of these now. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. May we now talk about the town where you grew up, Pruzhany. Pruzhany was a town not by the ocean, not by a railroad station. It was a town in the middle, but 12 kilometers was a railroad station. A very important railroad station was Orančice, because this was a railroad station which the train was passing from Warsaw through Moscow. And this was a very important station. In this Orančice was a small village, and that was also called Linovo.
Right.
Stancja Orančice, miasteczko Linovo was called. And in this town, in this village, my sister lived, and my parents lived for a while. I lived there too. I was born in Pruzhany, but I lived with my parents. They moved after I don't know when. They lived in Linovo.
Approximately how far were you from Warsaw?
Oh, it was 5-6 hours by train.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but it was Brześć nad Bugiem, was our miasto powiatowe. It would be like here the capital of your state.
Yes.
Brześć nad Bugiem. It was not far from Baranowice, which was a very famous, and was Bereza Kartuska was very close to us. Bereza Kartuska was in Poland a very famous town because it was there a very famous prison. When you all the people were sent tried about politics, communists were sent there. It was a very big prison there, Bereza Kartuska. This was not far, within an hour traveling.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And Pruzhany was a town, a very Jewish town, because you couldn't find a town that had about 5,000 Jews and maybe about 4,000 Gentiles.
So the majority of people were Jewish.
We had 2 newspapers weekly, the Going Out. We had the Jewish library. We had the Hebrew Talmud school with the gymnasium. We had a Yiddish school. We had, it was a couple of shuls. It was a rabbi, a sheikhet, a bed house. It was a ritual bed. It was every year Hanukkah came, they had special bazaars, and it was a very, very Jewish-oriented town with a Jewish theater. It was a small train was coming from Pruzhany to Linovo. This was the communication. Also, a bus was coming constantly, traveling. If people wanted to travel from Pruzhany to Linovo and go to places like Warsaw, Brześć, that was the communication.
So you had access?
Oh yes, we had access
to other parts of the country, and
to all the parts of the country. Buses were coming and going to all the parts also.
Yeah. How many people were in your family?
In my family, direct in my family I was 6 girls, father and mother. I didn't know any grandfathers. I didn't have. By the time I grew up, my grandparents weren't alive.
So you had 5 sisters, is that?
Yes, including me 6. 5, and I was the 6th one.
Any brothers?
No, we don't. We were in a family who didn't have any brothers. And matter of fact, in very few boys in my mother's whole family was. And my mother had a lot of sisters and brothers.
And how did your family earn a living? How did your father or mother
my father
earn a living?
Was a teacher. My father was a very religious man. He was very educated in Hebrew, Russian, and he was self-taught in Polish. He knew all those languages very fluently. Matter of fact, he was the writer of letters to everybody who had to write to the United States, to their relatives, the letters. And we had a grocery store. He was his living. He was for a while a teacher, but teaching wasn't giving too much to support the family.
What did he teach?
Hebrew.
Hebrew.
Hebrew. I remember myself going, and all my friends, when we went to the Hebrew school, when we had to make homework, we always come to him to explain to him a part of Gemara or whatever. It came to religious, because I was asking always Saturdays when he was sitting and afternoon, and again with I was calling those the holy books, which we had a lot of them, and he was sitting against the stove to warm his back with the Gemara or with some kind of other book. And I was asking him, Daddy, after all, you are studying so much and every time the same thing, aren't you bored with it? He says, no, my child, you're never bored with those things. I can read the passage so many times and always interpret a lot of things that I missed. Mm-hmm. And in this you'll find everything. All the knowledge what you have, it's always go back to this forum.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And as far as he was religious, he was also, for his time in which he lived, he was a modern person, because he was reading the Moment, which was a Yiddish paper coming from Warsaw. The Moment, to read a religious Jew should read a secondary paper that was not customary. Mm-hmm. And he liked to have jokes with all my friends. Our house was the meeting house for all the children. Don't forget that I had 6 older sisters, 5. And our house the house was always full. Mm-hmm. Not only with friends, but Friday night we never sat down to eat without that shouldn't bring somebody from shul. Mm-hmm. A neirach of Shabbos. After all, it was a mitzvah. And to sleep over, as much as the house was small or big, it was always room for somebody to sleep over. Mm-hmm. My sisters already were more advanced. They belonged to the Zionist movement, to a chalutz. They had a meeting place where they had their meetings. And when a representative from another town was coming there and he had to sleep over, the sleepover place was in our house. My sister would come, take out the pillow from behind my head and says, you know what, you have to sleep today just like that, because we have somebody has to sleep on the sofa. It's a little sofa against the wall, and to give them to sleep over. My older sister, the first one, Malke, left in 1928 to the United States. A boyfriend whom she knew before, the whole family left already for the United States, came for her. But he couldn't come to town because otherwise the Polish, we would take him back to the army. That my father and my second sister, Esther, my father, my mother, and my sister, Esther, went to Gdańsk. This was the city that he could come, and they got married there in 1928.
Yes.
And my father and my mother returned back to Linovo. In this time we lived in Linovo. And my sister was staying still in Warsaw, because I remember, as small as I was, when she came back, it was something before Purim.
Yes.
You have to remember that we lived in times not like here that it comes a holiday and the sweets and everything. She brought from Warsaw a Gregor with little candies inside.
Yeah.
I remember I saw my sister, my older sister, a couple of weeks ago in Hartford, and I remind her, you see, I said, we start talking about something. I said, you know what I remember when Esther came back from Warsaw before Purim, and she brought this Gregor, because who had this kind? And Shalachmonis was sent. It was a dish with an orange, what they call the pomeranz, and an apple, and some sweets. Cookies you were sent, you had made themselves a pomeranz and orange. It was a novelty to see. This orange went from house to house, from dish to dish went, and that's how the shalach money went.
Mm-hmm.
Things that we're taking today for granted, it was something very unusual in those years, in those days.
Yes.
But we were happy in the circumstances in which we lived. My mother was a very hard-working person to raise a family with limited means. You tried to dress them as much as you could. We expected always a package to be sent from the United States with some clothes, and you repair them or you sew them. But we weren't hungry. We got dressed very nicely. Matter of fact, my sister Esther, she was seamstress. That's how she made for her some money. She was always dressed beautiful, and she was making clothes for the rest of the family. And she was making clothes for the peasants who are coming. If they didn't have money to pay her, they paid her with the chicken, with butter, with fruit, with all kind of means. And that's how we survived. That's how she made money. And she liked to travel. She liked to visit. We had a big family in Kobrin. She was visiting there. She was a very, very popular girl in town, dating some boys. Later on in life, when she got married in town to a very prosperous guy, he had, in those days, he considered himself very rich because he had a factory, a brick factory,
mm-hmm.
and his own workers. She lived, I would say, on the standard of, in those days, she lived a very high standard living.
Which sister was this?
The second one who got killed.
Yes.
She was Esther.
Esther.
And now we're coming to a point, and how come we winded up in Pruzhany and she was in Linovo? I don't know from where shall I start now. In 1939, when the war in September broke out between the Polish and the German, that was a day that I cannot forget, because this was the date that we had to see, my parents, my father, my mother, and myself, to see the American consul in order to go to the United States.
Why? What made you want to go to the United States?
First of all, I had these two sisters already here.
Yes.
And my father's dream was to come to the United States. Life wasn't so easy. Anti-Semitism was great. Every Sunday, when the peasants got paid, Friday, for instance, the working peasants around, they got drunk. We have to lock our doors because they were coming to the Jewish houses, breaking the windows, and going to the stores and making a mess of everything. You were afraid to go to stick out your head on a Sunday night and a Sunday day, because they were, let's go to the Żydów. It means, let's go after the Jews. And my father wanted to go to be in the United States. Mm-hmm. But his dream wasn't accomplished because the war broke out and we couldn't go to the council. But all the time I remember he had with him, he thought that maybe we survived the war, and the postcard was with him all the time. I think, as I can remember, I'm not sure, that I had with me someplace the postcard, but somewhere got lost during the...
When he went to the council, had he already...
We didn't go.
Oh, you...
This was the day that we have to go when the war broke out.
Yeah, yeah.
We couldn't go already.
But you already had definite plans.
Definitely plans to go to the United States.
Yeah. Did you know when you were going to leave and everything?
That's the council. When we would visit the council, he would give us a date when to go.
Yeah.
And this, he was heartbroken. And then the war broke out. between the Germans and the Russian. No, the Germans and the Poles, 1939. Part of Poland becomes German, part of Poland becomes the Russian. The Red Army took us over. We became already now not Polish, not German, but Russian. The first time the Russian came, they were very friendly, very accommodating. They never saw anything, even with what we had in the small towns, they never had. It was, for them, was watches, chasiki. When they saw a watch on somebody's hand, they would give away everything to get them. Right away, our store was confiscated. You don't have any private enterprises. You have to live in community. Everything was already stores where the government provided.
Yes.
We had to, the young people went back to school. We went right away back to school. I went back to school and learned, for some reason, Russian came to me very, very easy. I learned Russian in no time. I speak very well Russian, and my pronunciation and my accent was very good. For the first time I heard that I have an accent when I came to this country. But that's beside the point. I went to school for a year. My schooling was good, and being that they were very short, that was 1939 going into 40. In 1940 I was sent into a teacher's seminar to try to, they were taught me to how to be a teacher for the first grade, a first grade teacher. And I was, after 6 months, they sent me to a village.
How old were you at this time?
I was there around 18 years old.
And what was the extent of your schooling at the time?
My schooling was, I was then finished the 10 year of schooling. Because over there you have to go to school when you're 6 years old.
Did you go to a gymnasium or anything?
I was going already to the gymnasium, and then when the Russian came, I continued with the schooling. I continued with the schooling, and being that probably they saw they had, I was good, and they sent me to the seminar. After 6 months, they gave me a class to conduct already, under supervision of another teacher. He had, in the small villages, you had 2 classes combined because not too many students were there, and it was 1 room classroom.
Yes.
Then it was 2 classes, the first and the second grade, and I was teaching and going in the same time in the afternoon and in the evenings in school.
Can you tell me what happened to your father's business under the Russians?
When the father's business, it was closed up. Whatever you couldn't use your business, but you could use the products what you had. You took them, and you when you.
But the business was taken by the state.
No, the business. All the small stores were closed out, and it was one big store. What was I cannot recall the name for the stores. One big store like Hirepiex, that you go and you buy everything, whatever it is. Today they're giving bread, you take bread. Tomorrow they're giving shoes, you take shoes, even it doesn't fit you. But it's they're giving today, you have to buy. Because in 2 weeks later, they'll give, somebody will have your size, you'll exchange. In Russian was one very famous word, machnion. It means we'll exchange things. And when the Russian came, it was also a very famous saying, SSSR, Sachar stoit 100 rublei. It means that sugar cost 100 rubles. That was the abbreviation of the SSSR, because everything was, here we lived in Poland, it was not a rich country, but at least we had everything to live. And when they came, everything was disappeared.
How was your family affected economically and emotionally by what was happening?
Economically, in the beginning, we still survived on the products what we had with us. And you exchanged. If a peasant needed salt and you still had a big sack of salt, which was very important, then you gave him a measure and he brought you a chicken, he brought you butter, and he brought you some grains.
So it was a barter system, really?
It was like exchange.
Yes, I see.
At most, it was exchange.
Yes.
And my father didn't work, but being that we had a few rooms, we rented out a room to one of the officers, which he paid us with rubles. And for the rubles, you could go and buy in the PX or in the money, right away the rubles were, the rubles were the money on which we could live.
Did you get a regular salary as a teacher?
Yes.
And
the salary, I cannot even recall how much it was.
Yes.
But probably very minimum.
And how many of your sisters were still living in your home at this time?
In 1939 was only myself and my second sister Esther, who was married and had already a child. And she didn't have to work. Her husband had this factory, but the factory was confiscated too.
Yeah.
And but he was working as a supervisor in his factory. He became already a supervisor, not an owner, but a supervisor from the factory.
Right.
And they lived with us in the same house already. She took a room. My father had a room, and my mother, and it was a big dining room, a kitchen, and the room what we rented out for the officer, and I wasn't home because I was in the village teaching.
So you lived in the village for a while?
Yes, I lived in the village for a while. It was the village Lozovci by Kosov. That was the village.
Right.
Where I lived, and I was teaching. I had a room in a peasant's house, and I could, don't forget in those days, I was still religious and observing the religious dietary. And I was cooking. Once in a while I was going to Kosovo to buy myself some things that I could eat. People were very religious still. Even the Russian didn't believe in religion, but we still went to shul. We still observed the holidays. Slowly the young people were they were walking away from the religion on account of, I would say, to be more popular with the Russian.
Yeah.
Which was very important for everybody.
Was there any kind of religious prohibition or persecution under the Russians?
At the not still in 1940, 39, 40, no. We still went to shul. We still observed the holidays. We still had a shoichet. Matter of fact, my father was a shoichet too.
Yeah.
And
did he still teach also? Did he teach also?
No, he didn't teach.
No.
He didn't teach. He didn't teach. He just helped us out with things. When I had a problem with the Russian grammar or with something, he was helping me, but he didn't teach. He was very, very depressed, very disappointed. And we were going on living like this from day to day. I was going to school, and I remember when it was in 1941, in the spring. I came back after the school was ended. The school year was ending. I came back home, and I stayed home. I was supposed to stay for 2 weeks and go to Brześć nad Bugiem. It was for us organized to all the summer to spend in a teacher's workshop
Right.
And I had everything arranged to go there. And in 1941, in middle of June, I think it was in June already.
June 22nd?
22nd. Everybody was so happy. The night before, it was a night before we had a ball in town. And they took all the young boys, before going to the army. That was like an evening, introductory evening for them. And they were on the flu field, and where we had in town in Pruzhany, and there said, you know what, you'll see how many of our aeroplanes we have today, like an experiment for you to show. And here the aeroplanes are coming, but instead of being friendly aeroplane, they start to bombard this place. And it was so unexpected, so suddenly, that everybody started running away. The army alone didn't know what's happened.
And these were, of course, the Germans.
These were the Germans already bombarding the Air Force and bombarding this railroad station, what I told you, because this was a very important, which would take them back on the railroad back into Russia.
So this was the day that Barbarossa began.
That's when the war begins. The Germans came in. If we didn't know what was bad with the Russian, which we didn't have so bad, we didn't have maybe so good as we had before, but still we lived. Nobody was bothering us. Nobody was saying to us anything, but we didn't know what's coming to us. Here is 1941, and our misery begins in the moment they walked in. It didn't take them too long when the German tanks and the motorcycles marched into town. My family, myself, my sister and her husband and child were there in Linovo. In Linovo. They called everybody to the marketplace, all the Jews. Within half an hour of their arriving. And they called in and they said like this, that they're taking over, first of all, the biggest house in the village, in this town, in this village, which was a 2-story brick house, belongs to a Jew who was who had those it was Yomke Goldberg. They had a house, a very big house. They were the richest, I would say, in this little village. Mm-hmm. And they took over this. In front of this house, he called everybody and says like this, Jews and Gentiles, that the biggest enemy of the Written Reich are the Jews. And you Poles, you should nothing have to do with them. And from now on, you have to walk on the street, not on the sidewalk.
And the Jews were witness to this.
It was us. We couldn't stay in the home. They chased out everybody from the house. They make sure that everybody should be on the street.
Yeah.
And when you see a German officer going by, they should take off for him the hat. And now, what we need, we're taking over every big house, and we need a crew of people to clean up the houses and do for us all the work. And we need here men who are appointed from you Jews, to be your leader, that we don't want to come to every Jude to talk to. We want to have a representative to whom we talk. The people in the village wanted to be, my father should be this. My father told them, no, I am not going to be this. I'm too old. He was maybe there 55 years old, but in those years he was old. To me, he was an old man. He says, no, and I'm not going to be able to send a Jewish boy or a Jewish girl to work for. Let somebody younger. Avram Zuckerman, he was a young man. He was also a businessman. He says, let them be the representative for the Germans, which he was. At this point, he asked for people to go to work. In this village, I have to point it out, it was a village, very fine people, educated people, but we didn't have too many boys. The majority was girls. I had 10 girlfriends. When he came and asked us to go to work, for some reason, I was the first one to volunteer. And after me, all the girls with whom I became, what did they want from us? The Feldpolizei occupied a house. That means that they are the police what goes with the soldiers to the front. It wasn't the real assessment. It was just a police, what would you say? I don't know the name for it now. Feldpolizei, it means a police that goes with the army just for to make order, but they really...
They were military policemen.
Military police.
We call them MPs, yes.
Yes. And they asked us to, I and my 10 girlfriends, we came to the house where they occupied, and we asked them what we have to do. We didn't know how to speak German. Here we faced with a new language. Here we learned how to speak Russian, and here my name became not Heike, not anything. My name became Lisa. Lisa. That's how they wanted to call me, Lisa. My name became Lisa, and they say, Lisa, you'll be in charge of the kitchen. I will be in charge of the kitchen. I didn't know what to do. He says to me that they will have to have breakfast cooked for us, and another girl had to clean the floors, one had to wash the clothes, another one has to milk the cow, and some boys came, one chopped the wood. Don't forget that we had to, fire had to make by wood, and water had to bring in by in a pail still to the kitchen. It wasn't any central watering, and light was also still with a lamp and enough lamp. This particular house had electric lightning. The first thing she tells me, machen Sie mir Bohnencoffee. I didn't know what it is, Bohnencoffee. I never heard the word Bohnencoffee. Bohnencoffee are those beets that you have to grind and make coffee. He saw that we don't know, but he was very patient, really was very nice. He didn't yell at us. He saw that we don't understand. He wanted to help us. The man who was in charge of this house.
Now you said these men were not SS. They
not
were not
SS, not SS. They were very, very nice. They were very nice. They were corporate. They saw that we are young. We didn't know what. And he taught us what we have to do. This way, we stayed with them for 2 months. The day before they had to go away, that was exactly their words.
This was around August.
That's around August.
Yes.
They said to us like this, if you can, run away. Because with us, we didn't mind. The SS is coming now to you. The SS is taking over. You have a very, very tough time. But where could we run? Well, to the next town, they were Germans too. And in my case, I couldn't, my parents depended on me a lot. When I was working in this, for the 2 months, I provided food for the whole family. Because working in the kitchen, we didn't sleep there. We came in the morning and went at night. After about 6, 7 o'clock, we went, after supper, we made supper and cleaned the kitchen, we went home. This way I could bring something home. I was I was telling him like this. You know what? They wanted to bake kuchen I should make for them. Cakes. I should bake for them kuchen. Then I told them, I'm young, I don't know how to bake kuchen. But my sister is a very good baker. I had two things in mind. I had in mind that my sister should be occupied with something, and when they'll give me all the products to bake the cakes, at least it was something left in the house too. Then he says, all right, we'll put some flour and sugar and eggs and everything, all the ingredients, and a small hand wagon we brought to my house, to my parents' house, and she was baking cake. And in the meantime, when I was transferring all the ingredients, I put in a piece of butter, a piece of chocolate for my niece, things to bring home. Mm-hmm. I was like the provider for the whole family.
Yeah, yeah.
And I couldn't make myself to go away. And I wouldn't even think about running away. And this way, we survived. Mm-hmm. The same thing my other friends who walked. Every time when we walked back home, we tried to hide a little something with us to bring home. And this particular gentleman, who was on the housing, he begged us to run away, but we didn't have where to run. When the SS came, it was an entire different story. That's when our misery began. On one Saturday, now, the ghetto in Pruzhany started already organized. This was 12 kilometers. Linovo is 12 kilometers from Pruzhany. Pruzhany and Linovo was a very close relationship because a lot of families were living in Linovo, and all the business was done through the station, because a lot of people were having business with contact to Warsaw. They had to come to Linovo on the station and go to Warsaw.
Yes.
And the ghetto already started to be organized in Pruzhany. One Saturday afternoon in Linovo, the SS called everything outside. And they start to make fun of us. They took a wagon and horsed my father into it on a Saturday afternoon and told them to pull the wagon, which he had to do, because otherwise he would be beaten to death or shot. Because this particular assessment, a tall, good-looking German, never walked around without a whip hanging on his right arm. He was known as the whipper. And after this incident, my father came home and he says, you know what? We're packing our bundles and we're going to the ghetto with all the Jews. We're not going to stay here anymore. My sister didn't want to go. That's why she was left in the house with her daughter and her husband. Myself, my father and my mother, we came to the ghetto. We came to the ghetto like everybody else. The ghetto was already cut off all the main streets. The ghetto was taken away like in a square. All the main streets were cut off, and a barbed wire was already. And they gave us a little room. And in meantime, when we were in this little room, they start bringing people from other towns and other villages to the ghetto. They brought in from Shereshov. It was also a small town not far from Pruzhany, where my uncle, my aunt, two uncles and two aunts, and those little girls for my cousins, from my other aunt. They brought them to the ghetto. In this particular apartment, what we had, it was a bed, a sofa, a little table, and another bed. My father and my mother was in one bed, my aunt was in another bed, and I was sleeping on this little sofa against the window. And in a corner was a little stove, not a stove what you have here. That's a stove what you put in the wood inside and you cook. This was where we cooked. 4 people in a small room. My uncle and my aunt and another uncle was in another building. But life in the ghetto wasn't easy. Besides that, well, we were afraid that every day was the Judenrat. First of all, it was the Judenrat. Judenrat was like here the Federation. Here a Federation. Right away, the Germans were very smart in this. They didn't want to have nothing to do with you, Jude.
Who was the head of the Judenrat? Was it this man Zuckerman you told me?
The Judenrat now in Pruzhany was Bloch.
Bloch.
A businessman. He was a dry good businessman. He was a doctor, Nitzberg, a doctor, Goldstein. It was a man who was, he was visiting the family. He was representative from a company. He was, all his life he lived in Gdańsk. And he was visiting his family in Pruzhany, but the war caught him there. He was called our Visa minister. He was, because he was speaking German, he was the one who was bringing all the bad news between us and the Germans. Mm-hmm. When the Germans wanted something, he was called on him. I cannot remember, he survived. He was in concentration camp. I cannot remember his last name. Mm-hmm. And he was the one, the Judenrat was trying to find a room for every Jew who was brought into the ghetto. In cellars and attics and in rooms, every place was occupied in order to give a place. They knew that if somebody was running away from some place and came to the Pruzhany ghetto, it was known, if you come to the Pruzhany ghetto, they'll find for you a room. Mm-hmm. They'll find for you a place. You'll have food. It's not good food, but you'll have something to eat. Food was very poor quality. As you see, I was always determined maybe to live. No hard work was for me too hard or not too easy work. I was doing, you mentioned work, and I was doing, starting from washing floor and cleaning toilets and washing windows and being a cook and being a milkman and chopping wood and digging potatoes in the field. I did everything of those things. Being in
was your ghetto, excuse me, was your ghetto an open ghetto or a closed ghetto?
No, it was a closed ghetto. Mm-hmm. You couldn't go in, you couldn't go out.
But you were allowed into the fields?
The ghetto was like this. It was a barbed wire and a gate. The gate was a wood, and it was standing a Jewish from the ghetto policeman, a German, and a Polish policeman from town, from the natives. Mm-hmm. And if you went out to walk out of the ghetto, it was fall. The peasants didn't have workers. They had to find, the ghetto had to provide workers for them. They came.
10 minutes for this section. Go ahead, please. Continue.
They came and they said that they need 20 people to dig potatoes and 10 people to take up fruit from in the orchards, mm-hmm. and 15 people to clean the barn. The amount of people, what they required, came to the gate. The Judenrat an evening before called on people, and Who wants to go? I volunteered to go to dig potatoes. Because the Judenrat said to us, whoever is going to go out in the fields, the farmer will let you take potatoes, as many as you can carry, and the guard will let you in with it. Because if you walk someplace else, you were searched every time you went out, and every time when you walked in, you were counted. How many went in and how many went out? It had to fit the number. Mm-hmm. That's when I heard that I can bring back potatoes to the ghetto. That I was in seventh heaven. I was working in the hospital and I got only a piece of bread. Then I was happy to go out of the ghetto, which was less for a nice couple of weeks. Every time I was bringing potatoes, and I was for the family, I gave for my cousins, I gave I was like supplying everybody around me. And being that I was young, and I knew all my friends in town, and they were in charge. One was in charge for the milk, one was in charge and giving out marmalade. It was jam, made out from beets and carrots. Believe you me, it was the most tastiest jam I ever ate. And in all the places I had somebody that I knew, that I was going around and I was getting, that my parents had better than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And being me, that we went out for those walk. Coming at night back to the village, to the ghetto. This way we walked for quite a while till it stopped. Till I went back to the hospital. I was working in the with the doctor chemistry. Mm-hmm. The doctor chemist survived. Matter of fact, I met him later after the war in one of the sanatoriums in Berlin, in Germany, in Gauting. That's by Munich. Mm-hmm. That's why I met him. And life in the ghetto was very, very bad. Sanitary conditions, unbelievable. Food was rationed of very poor quality. And people were dying, if they weren't killed by the Germans, from TB.
How were they being killed when they were being killed? Were there actions?
First of all, you were taken out to working. Today they're coming and say that they need 20 people to go someplace. They don't tell you where. 20 boys, young age, they want them to have. They came back only 15. Why? He didn't like the look of him, or he didn't look good at him, or he maybe didn't walk so fast as the German wanted him. Bing, bing. Without regret. What's a big deal? Whom he's killing? A Yiddish swine? It means a Jew pig? What is it, a Jew? A Jew is worth it anything? They take away from you the pride. They take away from you you to be a human being. They're putting on a yellow star from the front and in the back. God forbid, if he's walking and he sees you from the back, he should recognize that you're a Jew. You couldn't walk on the street, you have to walk on the sidewalk. Your friends with whom you went to school cannot talk to you. They forbid any gentle friend with whom I grew up together. We stopped talking to each other. They made you feel like you're nothing. Sometimes you felt, what for they live? Let them kill me. I cannot take this anymore. But you're young. You still, in the evenings, even it was a curfew hour, we still try to get together with young people in the evening. At a joke. One night, we were sitting in my house, some boys and girls together. We were young. My father, as I told you, he was so outgoing, and not, was no mother, not on this time. And he wanted to go into the room. He says, boys and girls, I'm lighting up a match. It means if we are cuddling to each other, we should part. And it is, but we managed. We did a lot of things that young people try to do in the ghetto. And a lot of marriages became in the ghetto. Because when you were married, they were not sending you out in the Arbeiterlagers, but only in the vicinity to work. Mm-hmm. That's how my friend got married. Dorbe Goldberg was married to my husband's brother. Mm-hmm. I got married to a Brydbord. Another one was married to others. That's why we try to survive.
You knew your husband from
I know my husband from
years.
Way back. I know him from way back. He reminds me from how much he knows me. When we had the grocery, he was coming with another friend from Pruzhany delivering to our grocery soda. They had a soda factory, his friend. He came with him to help to deliver the soda to our grocery. Then he remembers me from then on. This was 41. The old summer and the winter from 40 till 41. In 41, the winter wasn't so good. We didn't have wood with what to use. We used all the, wherever we found, yes. My husband was a carpenter. He was working in a Warstadt, in a place for the Germans to make coffins for the soldiers who were coming from the front, from the fighting, and they had to make for them coffins. He was working on those coffins, and he was bringing always a bag with little pieces of wood, and which was good for us to have something to heat the place. Right. He lived with his family, also not far in the ghetto. And he was supplying his family also with those things. And he had an accent, he and a friend, Elshomoavsky. They were very close friends, and they were the one very often going out of the ghetto to bringing those coffins for the Germans. And on the way back, they sneaked in all kind of food and other things. Yeah. The time in 1942, no, this was 41. 1942, winter of 42 was not easy. Very bad. More and more demand on us from the Germans to give young people, to send them in Arbeiter camps, which they never returned. And we didn't know.
These were slave labor camps.
We didn't know about slave labor camps. We didn't know about ghettos, about concentration camps. We didn't know that anything like this exists. We knew they taking him, impale far someplace in Poland in Arbeiter camps. Arbeiter camps. But everybody would try to usually put it this way. A Bezhenets. What was a Bezhenets? A Bezhenets was a person who came to the ghetto, but he wasn't a native. Then, if he was alone and he didn't have with whom to stay, he was willing. He thought maybe it's going to be easy. They were always first to go, the Bezhenets, those home, the people who didn't have a home, to go in those places which never returned.
We're going to have to stop now for just a few minutes to set a new tape. Take a drink and I'll give you some more water. Mrs. Brydbord, what happened to your parents?
My parents, myself, and my other relatives lived in the ghetto. My parents, like any other Jew in the ghetto, didn't do anything, waiting from day to day to the events, to go out in the street to listen, to know what's going on. News came that they're liquidating ghettos, and they're chasing out by marching, not on trains, not by horse and wagon, people from towns, from villages to ghettos. And every day we're expecting more people in the ghetto. In the ghetto, at night, they chase you out from the house, and it was a sailing to count you. I don't know what for, they had to count every...
At sail upheld?
At sail, yes. They count how many. The ghetto had already over 10,000 Jews in cut-up streets, as I told you before, in conditions that we didn't have any more where to live. But we still accepted people who were running away or were brought into the ghetto. First of all, we didn't have a choice. It was not to our liking. We had to make room for them. If the Germans brought a transport with Jews from a village, 200 Jews, we had to accept them. And in this condition we lived. My sister lived in Pruzhany, in Linovo. She didn't want to come to the ghetto. Linovo wasn't a ghetto. Linovo, the people lived where they lived in the houses, and they did all the work for the Germans there. I was walking by foot through special, I know already shortcuts from Pruzhany, from the ghetto. I sneaked through the wires, and other people who had family in Linovo, from the ghetto to see the people in Linovo. Why did we do this? Because when I came to Linovo to my sister, and being that she lived in the house, she had all the clothes and things still from the store what we existed to exchange with the peasants for food. And on the way back, I was coming there, bringing from the ghetto like thread and needles and things that the peasant need. I was bringing to my sister, and she was exchanging this for food, and I was coming and bringing this back to the ghetto. I was coming, my other friends from our town, the rabbi's son was doing it, and we were back and forth. In 1942, a group was taken, and our people from ghetto were always going to Linovo to work there by the railroad station to dig ditches, because words were coming that the partisans are going to blow up the railroad station because of the importance of this railroad station, because the Germans were already deep in Russia and they needed this station very much.
Were these Jewish partisans or Russian partisans?
I didn't know anything who they are. That was partisans. We didn't know who it was.
Yes.
Partisans. The name was partisans. We didn't know, but we knew that mostly are military from the runaway from the Russian army.
Yes.
They are soldiers, officers who ran away from the Russian army, or didn't let themselves be taken prisoners by the Germans. First of all, right away, it was news that they mistreat the prisoners. Then the soldiers the philosophy of the soldier, the Russian soldier, was like this: instead of to be killed by the Germans, then we hide in the woods and fight them. A lot of them went to the woods, and that's how the partisans organized.
Yes.
We didn't know. We knew that partisans exist, but where would a Jewish boy or girl be thinking about partisans? But the situation was closing on us. News from ghettos came in that they liquidating ghetto after ghetto and taking people to our Arbeitslager. Arbeitscamps, working camps, which nobody returns. But the Germans need you to work because they need the workers. And our town was still in because our workers are very important for them. And they are promising the Judenrat that will be for a long time because we are very good Jews. We are very good Jews. And this was like this going on. But, you know, among young people, it's always start to be like a movement. And they've been starting to meet in secret places, young people in the ghetto. Mm-hmm. They start to smuggle in from outside. When they went to work, they bits and pieces of ammunition. And in one of the basements from the raid corps, where they were a part of this secret people who were getting ready to go to the partisans in their basement, they were meeting. He wasn't my husband then yet, but my Paul, his name was then, they called him Fivel, and Misha Rodnitsky, and Raid Corp, I don't remember all those names.
Yeah.
And they were meeting in this, and my husband, being that he was a carpenter, he was doing the woodwork for the rifles.
Yes.
And you see, in the same family, could two people be in the organization, but they didn't know each other. They didn't know that, because my husband didn't know that his brother belongs also to this organization. He met him once on this kind of a meeting, and he asked him, why didn't you tell me that you belonged? And he says to him, why didn't you tell me that you belong here? His brother was 15 years old. Hmm. He was the first one to leave in 1942, when Yujik Friedman came from Bereza Kartuska, from this ghetto. He ran away from the ghetto, and he was in the woods. And he came to the ghetto with two other partisans. And they came to this group and told them about going away to the partisans. One night, in 1942, I think it was in June 42, the first group, it was 12 people. It was Barrow, it was Sharodnitsky. I'm blank.
It's all right.
I cannot remember. But among those 12 people was my future brother-in-law, Tevye Brydbord, 15 years old. Yeah. He left with this group. They took the ammunition. They took some food. Mm-hmm. Fivel has to leave also the same night. But he came to say goodbye to his mother.
Yeah.
His mother was hysterical. He says, I am not going to be able to show my face into the ghetto. You're Banditen, you're running away. Because of you people, the ghetto will be destroyed. You cannot go. She started crying. That Paul says to her like this, Fivel, what he called him then.
Yes.
Fivel says to her, you know what, mother, I'm going to stay. He was already then, his father wasn't alive. His father died in 1936. And his older brother, Aaron, was in Israel already. Mm-hmm. And he was like the provider in the family. Mm-hmm. Then he says, you know what, Mom, I'll stay, but Tuvia is going, which has happened. And they made like arrangements with those partisans that not everybody is leaving. The 12 people are leaving tonight. Mm-hmm. But the rest of them are staying, trying to smuggle in and make ready more ammunition, because without ammunition you cannot go any place. You are lost. So to prepare some food in the near future, they should leave. This was the arrangement. And the arrangement was made also with the partisans, what they are living with the group. When you hear bad news about the ghetto, you should wait on the outskirts of the ghetto. The ghetto was not far from, not really big woods, but it was that you could hide for a night. That you should be even in the vicinity, that we should be able to find you. Life is unpredictable. But things don't happen the way you want or you plan them. The people who left in the ghetto start getting ready. And Paul Feivel was coming, he was courting me, he was coming to me, to visiting me in the evenings, and he was always telling me, he told me, I have to tell you something, but it cannot go further. You must know that it's a very big secret that a group left last night to the partisans. And Tuvia was among them. I wanted to go too, but my dear mother was crying and I decided to stay. And now you should know, when I am not coming or you'll hear something about something that cannot be sometimes with you, you should know that I'll send somebody to inform you where I am. And we survived like this. Things were going on in the ghetto, sending out people to work. News, very bad news were coming that they're liquidating ghetto after ghetto. This was already in December. Things were very bad. It was very cold, a cold
December
winter.
42.
That was already for December. That was already. We are at December 42. We are going already to 1943. The Judenrat has to do a lot of giving away people. Some people in the Judenrat don't like what's going on, and they try to commit suicide. They tried to commit suicide, and they failed. One person died from this because they couldn't take anymore to send out. They knew that they're sending people. They are like they give him the sentence of death to the people, and they couldn't.
They felt guilt.
They feel guilty. They feel guilty.
Yes.
And they didn't want to do this. A few of us got married, as I told you before, because if you married, they didn't take you or send you away, because you married. About 5, 6, the marriage was like this. We went to a place, they put the chuppah, they said mazel tov, and that's what they did the marriage. That's already January 1943. 2 of our partisans who left in June came back to talk to the Judenrat to help us. Unexpected. They came, those German walks into the office, into the Judenrat. Fighting starts. They came to announce that the ghetto is going to be liquidated. But they didn't announce this through what we call the minister, us, who was in contact with them constantly. Or Sigal was his name. Sigal was our ISA minister. That he was the contact when they didn't contact him. They came straight to the Judenrat, and that's when they found the partisans shooting. They start to shoot at each other. Those partisans ran away. One of them was shot at. He was running away by the wires, and the liquidation began the next day. The liquidation began systematically. by streets. I was in my parents' house, and Fievel came running to me, to the house, and he says to me like this, he must run. He cannot tell me where he's going to be, but somebody will come for me. He doesn't know when, tonight or tomorrow. And my father says, like this, what are you, shushkenzach, shushkenzach? It means, what are you talking so quietly about something? Then I didn't have any choice. I told father what's happened. And father says to me like this, then why don't you go with him? Don't stay with us. I says, but he doesn't know if I can go with him. Then, and he left. The next day, our street wasn't taken yet. I was staying in the house, and he's after me. Did you see Fievel? Did you hear from Fievel? I says, no. He said, why did you let him go? Why did you let him go? I said, he couldn't take me. And we lived in a street. Our house was the last one, like in a dead end. In the beginning of the street, I saw the Germans coming. My father says they said, take your belongings. That's what they let you carry with you on the sleds. It's January 1943. It's a lot of snow, and it's very cold. My father says to my mother, don't, in Yiddish, Rivke, neem gar nicht. Man darf nicht gar nicht. Take the thalers, I'll take my thalers, take whatever you have to. And to me he says like this, you're not coming with us. You see, ran to the field, to the other part of the ghetto. Maybe you'll find Fievel tonight, and maybe you'll be the lucky one to go to America and find your sisters, and you'll tell them everything what's happened here. Don't come with us on the transport. I ran away. And I came to the other part of the ghetto, and I went straight to his mother's house. His mother's house wasn't taken yet. I came there, and she was crying and screaming that she put him to death, that she was the one, because otherwise, if she would insist him to stay, he would went with the first night in June, with Teddy, with everything, but he would be now with the partisans and everything fine. During the ghetto, during the time of the ghetto, everybody was making in the house a schon. That means a tiny place, a bunker.
Yes. My
husband had a very good friend. It was my friend too. A very good friend that he was indeed in their house constantly. They considered him like their own son. They were a dentist. The woman, that's Nitzbergs. She was a dentist, and he was the technician, the technic for the tooth technician. And in his house, they made a bunker. Paul, my husband, with the family, made over there a bunker. When I came, their street, the first day wasn't taken too. From his mother, I went to see my friends. And my friend, Sole, says to me like this, you know what? I don't know if you did good or wrong, but Fievel ist auch vermischt mit nicht gute Menschen, that he got involved with not the right people, because
this is his mother speaking. Them. This is his mother speaking?
No, my friend is speaking.
Your friend is speaking
to me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe he did the right thing. I am going with my parents on the transport. But you, if you need the bunker, you can use it. He asking me if I saw Fievel. I says, no, I don't know where he is. But he told me that he'll send for somebody for me. And I'm going back to his mother's house. And his mother says to me like this, you see, I'm giving you 2 spoons.
Hold it up, please.
This spoon is a silver spoon. My husband is from a very, very rich family way back. They had a very rich farm, acres and thousands of acres of woods. And here is the initials, his grandmother's initial. Tuvie, Temet given, Temet Brydbord. It's in German. German still from the First World War. And her mother, his mother already took out 2 silver spoons, and she said, what can I give you? Take those 2 spoons. I preserved mine all the time from the partisans. My husband lost his, and that's what I'm keeping with me.
Yes.
She gave me this, and she told me like this. Somebody was here. Sole Selecki was looking for you. You must find him. He'll be on the corner of Patsavicha Gas. He'll be there waiting for you. I ran out. I said to her goodbye, and went there. He was waiting for me, and he took me to to a house where they were hiding. It was Fajvel, Mendel Kaganovich, sie given Chaja Czerczewska, a cousin of mine, sie was given Reitkop, it was Bogman, it was Silverberg, it was Burak. A few other men. Among them was a couple of older men.
Yeah.
To us, they were older. They maybe about 25 or 26, when we were 17, 18 years old or 19. And
it's hard to imagine how young you really were in those.
I cannot imagine. I was always old.
Yeah.
I was old and very, I don't know the word for it to say, outgoing, not frightened. That's why probably it kept me moving, going, and to survive all the bad circumstances, the hunger. I didn't make bed when I didn't have anything. And later in my life, when I had to work for everything what I have now, I'm a proud person because nobody gave me anything. Whatever we have now, what we accomplished, it's only between me and my husband was.
Yeah.
We raised nice children, gave them a good education, but nobody gave me anything.
Yeah.
Now going back to this particular time, we didn't know. They went out, I went, I saw, they brought me to the house where Paul was and the rest of the parties. The people were supposed to run away this particular night. But after the transport was taken out, we went out from the house, and still the ghetto was existing. A lot of people were still there because it took 4 days to liquidate the ghetto. In the morning they were coming, taking street by street and taking them out. And the second day we came out from the house and we went to look if we can find somebody that we know. I came to the house from where my parents supposed to be still. Nobody was there already. The street was out. We went to my friend's house when the bunker was. Nobody was there. We hid it this particular night. We hide ourselves in this bunker. The next day we went out and we said, no, we cannot stay in the bunker because they'll look for people. We came out, we went to another house. We stayed there the day. Close to the evening, 2 boys went out to the barbed wire, to the booth where the police was standing. Now it wasn't a ghetto policeman there anymore, but it was a native policeman and a German. 2 of the boys went over and talked to the native policeman because they knew him. And they said to him, you know what, tell us, we'll pay you money, we'll do anything. But tell us, when is the good time to escape? We want to escape. He told us, you know what, 12 o'clock, the guy is going into the booth to take a rest. That's going to be a good time for you in this particular place. You'll come and you'll go under the wires and you'll run away. We'll give you money. And us, oh no, she says, you leave me machines, sewing machines. We should leave for him. We went to the ghetto and started to collect till 12 o'clock. I remember now. Then went from house to house. It was standing machines, and we went to the Judenrat. In Judenrat was a mess. People sitting and not knowing what to do. The leaders from the Judenrat disappointed, hurt. They don't know what to say to nobody. And money, you see, they're going in from a basement, pushing out Polish zlotys. I remember so, because I was walking in Polish zlotys with my feet and didn't bend in to take a dime. But what did I take is bunches of skin, leather. This, I don't know why. I thought to myself, we'll give him the leather, we'll give him machines, maybe we'll be able to escape. You know, it was so funny. 2 days before we escaped, my uncle, he was a very rich man and he didn't have any children. He gave us, probably was $200 or $300. He gave it. He says to me and to Fivo, take this. Maybe you'll have sometimes to use. We were laughing. What do we need money? If we're going to run away, what would we need money? Yeah. But believe you me, this money gave us a good. We bought bread for this money when we were later in the woods. When after we accumulate the machines and then everything in the leather, by 12 o'clock we went to the wires we wanted to go. He sold us out because they start shooting at us. They start shooting and we start to run. We left everything behind us, throw the machines and the leather and everything, and we ran back to our hiding. We were sitting there the whole night, the whole day, and here we know that the ghetto is getting smaller and smaller. It's left only a few streets, and they'll start looking in the houses if anybody is hiding. We didn't have any choice. We took our lock in our hands and we went to another part of the ghetto where another guy, don't forget, those people were brought up with those policemen. They were going together to school. They were neighbors, but now they became policemen. Mm-hmm. Some were forced. Some they went because they wanted to be. Mm-hmm. We found a guy. They made arrangements with him, and he said in Polish like this. They asked him if he wants something, we should leave him money or something. He says, I don't care what you're going to leave me. In Polish he says, chłopcy, ratujcie się. It means, boys, escape. Try to escape, and by 12 o'clock we had a place from which we had to go. 12 o'clock, it was like this. We had to pass under the wires, and it was the Mojaviec. It's a little a going water stream was there. It wasn't frozen. And we had to cross. To cross this little water, and we are hiding in towards the woods. It was like a park, and after the park to the woods. We wanted to go into the park, and from the park already to go to the woods. It was a very, very cold night. I was wearing a beautiful red coat maroon coat with a collar was made for me, and was in the ghetto was made for me a pair of boots. A friend of Paul's made this for me, a good friend. And I had with me in a bag a few things, but we didn't, I don't know, for some reason we didn't have any food. I had pictures, I had whatever I could grab from the table in a bag. I grabbed the tablecloth, I remember, and put in the bag, which later was so helpful because I hadn't something to wrap myself when I was in the woods. And this particular night, we escaped through the wires into the water, and we were so nervous, and I got so scared that I fell into the water with my body. But it didn't stop me. I picked myself up, and I was after those 12 people what we were there. And as we were looking, turning around and showing the reminding of the lights from the ghetto, but we left forever. And our loved ones and everybody else what was there in our mind was that we'll never return again. We didn't know what's ahead of us. We ran away. We were walking all night. We didn't know where we are. We didn't meet the partisans. Here is a bunch of 12 young people. The oldest maybe was 25 or 28 years old among us. We don't know what to do. We don't have any facilities even to make a little bit water. It's cold. It was good that a few people of them were smoking. They probably had with them some kind of a matches, because we came in some kind of a woods. But the older one knew them because they were horse handlers. And they knew a little bit the vicinity. They said, let's stop here and we'll rest a little bit. We rested. He says, you know what? We'll make a little fire to warm up. And here on me, on myself, on my body, everything got frozen. My chest and my feet got frozen. And what shall I do? I've been sitting and I said to them, I cannot go on like this. As young as we were and unexperienced, but I knew that my feet are getting frozen. And I said to them like this, they'll have to take off those boots for me. They pull up the boots, and I'm here without shoes, without nothing on my feet. That's when this tablecloth came very handy to me. I ripped in pieces, wrapped.
Was that the one you're carrying?
What?
Is that the one you have with you, the tablecloth?
No.
Oh,
no,
I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah.
This is from a parachute.
Okay. All right.
And I wrapped my feet, and we made a little fire, and we don't have nothing. They start looking in the woods. Maybe they'll find a box or something. You can imagine how much snow do you have to melt to have a little water. But then we start to swallow a little bit of the snow. This way we've been sitting all day, all night. The next day we heard some people walking in the woods. We were hiding very deep in the woods. We saw other people who ran away the same time from the ghetto to another part within 2 or 3 days. It was maybe 60, not more than 60 people who ran away from the ghetto and also were hiding in the woods. They were also looking for the partisans. We couldn't find. We knew. This instinct, we knew that a big group is not good. That we have to divide ourselves in smaller groups. And it's no good to stay in one place, a big group. That we divide ourselves in small groups. 10 to 12 people in a group. We came in a group. Our group consisted of 3. I was there, myself, 2 other girls, 3 girls and 9 gentlemen. This was one group. Another group and another group. We were scattered around, not far from each other. At night we would go out and talk about what we should do. We couldn't stay for long. Here we're dying from hunger. We don't have nothing to eat. How long we're going to... If the Germans won't kill us, the hunger will kill us. And don't forget, it's already February, and it's very, very cold. The frost and the snow, and it's unbearable. And here our pillow is the snow, our bed is the snow, everything is the snow. And when we cuddle up to each other, and that's how we survived the night. A few people says, you know what, we're having rifles. Let me go to the nearby village and we'll bring some food, because one way or another we're going to be dead. All right. 6 or 7 people picked themselves up. Those Chaja Czerczewska and
Or if you get the names, don't worry about it, please.
There's 2 of them went, 2 and 5 or 6 other young people went to the village to bring some food. You know, they were probably very greedy, our people, I would say. No experience whatsoever, how to handle themselves, or how could they? And they came to the village, they took a sled, they took with a horse, they start putting down all kind of food, bread, and whatever they come across, and to bring back to our place. That's what they did. They put everything, and they came back to the place, happy, go lucky. By this time, we already digged ourselves a hole, because we couldn't survive to be under snow. We made holes in the ground, like dig-outs, and we hid to go in and to hide ourselves from the cold. It was by 7 people. They brought this food, and they came to one place that everybody should take to divide among those people. For every group, a little bit. And those people who went for this went to this hiding place to rest. It didn't take them. I remember I was standing by the sled, taking out food to distribute for the other ones. And all of a sudden, shooting, we didn't know from which direction it came. You see, being not experienced, the peasants were angry that the people came, took from them the food, the horse and the sled, which for a peasant this is their livelihood, and the sled left the tracks, and they went straight to our place. When they start shooting, we didn't know what to do. But the instinct of living is so strong. We left everything, we start running. As I was running, I saw Paul coming in, Fivel coming in from another direction. He was running to look for me. And we saw bread on the ground. We grabbed the bread with only the idea, I'm going to die anyway. Then let me not be hungry, because we were so hungry. We couldn't even stand anymore the hunger. Then died, I'll be whatever is going to happen to us. Not to be hungry anymore. And we were running like this from bush to bush, from hiding under the trees, from hiding. Wherever we could. We didn't care who is alive or not. Just in this particular moment, you've been thinking about yourself. I was with Paul together and another, two people. All day they were shooting. But they didn't know how many of us are here, there. The Germans didn't know. We didn't shoot to them back. They didn't know who are we, even we Jews or we are partisans. They didn't know who we are. At night, quiet down, we decided to come back to see who is alive. We start coming from all corners. And we found 12 people of our people were dead.
Out of how many?
Of the 60. 12 people are dead. I didn't mention in the previous that Paul had 4 brothers. One brother was by this time already in Israel, Aaron. Avram was with us in ghetto, and he was married to a friend of mine, for my closest friend. But he didn't take, when he ran away from the ghetto, he left her behind. He ran away from the ghetto himself. And he was in this group, in this particular group, which went out for the food. And he was hiding. After they came, he went to rest. And the Germans, when they came the next day, put a hand grenade in this. And everybody...
Where he was
died.
Everybody.
When we came back this particular night, and we found out that 12 of them was dead, and among them Avremo, Feivel's brother. You know, we didn't even cry. We were like stones. Later, months later, we came back to bury all those people. But being that what we saw, we knew that we cannot stay anymore here. There will come again and again. That our decisions, you know, life's teaching you so many things that no books, no professors, no wise man can teach you. What circumstances and life is teaching you.
Yes.
We knew that we cannot be there. And one thing more, if we didn't find the partisans, we as a group, runaway Jews, cannot be in an exposed area. We must hide someplace that nobody can find us. That we decided that we'll divide again in small groups. This time I was staying close to Feivel, to Paul, and it was another 10 people. They were very unhappy with Paul and with me. Because why did they left their wives and Paul took me? Why they left their sisters and they didn't take them? So many wives. My cousin says, look, why didn't I take my wife? I was married already so many years, and you were married just now. I said, who didn't let you take your wife? Did I hold your hand not to take your wife? And you know that Feivel was doing so many things for the organization, for the partisans, that they let him go. And besides, he didn't ask them. It was a fact. Yeah. I was there already. They're not going to send me back. We went away. We walked all night long till we came to a place that you didn't see anything but woods. We came to a place, it was woods and a little hill. We always looked to a little hill that we can dig a hole, not to be wet. We digged all day long, we digged a hill. In this hill, we digged. You know, sometimes I'm thinking, from where did we get a shovel? Probably when we went to somehow we had a shovel. Whatever it was, we had a shovel. I cannot recall how. Yes. We digged a hole, we camouflaged with pieces of wood and a hole where you go in. Also camouflage with a bush. It's still February. If you dig out a bush and you put in, it's still green. And we're a bunch of Jews without food, without a leader. We don't know what to do and where to turn. No partisans. We don't hear from them. We don't know what's happening. How are we going to survive? And here we are dirty, hungry. Lies you'll never saw in your life. How, when they cut my hair, it was bleeding from so many
lies.
I didn't even know myself that a lie lies observing the color of the clothes what you're wearing. That's the color they're getting. We didn't wash ourselves. To take off clothes, it was a taboo. Because God forbid, in case you'll have to run. Yeah. You'll have to be in your clothes. At night, we were sitting and thinking what we should do, which way to turn. When in the daytime, we saw from far, in those parts of Poland, they don't have any refrigeration in those years. We didn't know about ice boxes, refrigerate. They hiding their vegetables and potatoes in like a mountain made out. You put everything in, you cover with straw, and then you cover with dirt, and you have an opening when every time when you need, you go to them, to this mountain, and you dig out whatever you need. That's called a scoppage. A scoppage. When we saw those copses around, not far, it was probably a nice couple of miles, but you could see them. Early in the evening, when it was already dark, we went there with our hands, made a hole, digged out some potatoes. We found a pail, came back to our hiding, and cooked those potatoes. No salt, no nothing. The water we had from the snow. One was after I cooked, the two women cooked. After I cooked, one of the men took the potatoes. We were sitting on the sand in this hiding. Everybody got a potato. And then afterwards, when potatoes are cooked, they're falling apart sometimes with sand, with everything what it was. They gave everybody a handful again, whatever it's left. Oh boy, those potatoes taste so good. Today, the best food doesn't taste as good as those potatoes. And this way we were living from day to day. This was already March of 43. Then it started to be warm. We start to see peasants coming out to look at their fields, if probably it's ready to do something. We knew that it's bad for us, that if they'll see you. They'll have to detect that somebody's here. First of all, you never cook in the daytime. You never go out in the daytime. Our only doing is at night. One night, we were desperate. We were so hungry. And we saw a little fire from a house from a very distant. Then we decided that our life is anyway in jeopardy. We're not going to survive too long. First of all, people start to lose from hunger and cold. You start to lose your memory. You don't remember. You're pretending that you are places. You're hallucinating. Yes. It's happened to Feivel. I don't know. I was stronger than him. He was a man, a young boy, and I was stronger than him. He started hallucinating that he says to me, don't you see that here is the bar that I have to go to work? I have to go to work. And how many times I told him, no, you don't. And you got swollen from hunger. Your feet got swollen. then we decided that it cannot go on. Two people, it was Mendel Kaganovich and another guy, decided that they'll go to this house from which we see the light. They went there. They made up this. The Russian, well, they spoke very well. They made up a story. The guy told them, listen to me. Don't give me stories. I know that here is a group of Jews who ran away from the ghetto is hiding. I know, but I am not going to tell anybody. You want to have something? Tell me what you want. We want a bread. We want to have something like to cover ourselves, and give us something to the bread, a piece of cheese or whatever you can to spare. And we'll give you whatever we can. I had a little ring on my hand the next time.
9 minutes more.
The next time we gave them. And this way, he became our scout. He gave us the news, and he whatever is going on, he was telling us that the Germans is a little bit in jeopardy, that the Russians pick themselves up and start fighting back. And if we are very desperate, he'll try to contact us to the real partisans. One night, it was about April already, we figured out when is Pesach. And we did, as far as we didn't need these 7 days, we didn't need the bread, what we had. And we figured out one night in April, far in April, as we were resting, always two people was on guard, didn't rest. They were watching to listen if somebody is not approaching to us. On short notice, everybody was waking up, and we would move away. This particular night, we heard somebody is moving in our direction, and then speaking Russian. We had with us a rifle. We were very brave. We start to say, stop, who is approaching us, in Russian. He said, the other party was, nie bespokójcie, it means, don't worry, we are the partisans, we're passing by here. We are the partisans, we're passing by. Among those people, 5 people were passing by, was my husband's brother. Tevye. He was already in the partisans. He was there when he saw us. I don't have to tell you how our meeting was. He right away asked me, where is Feivel? I says, Feivel is laying here. He's very, he doesn't know what's going on with him. His legs are swollen. He says, you know what? We having a mission to do. We're having to go and burn a special ammunition point. On the way back, we'll try, it's going to take us 2 days. That's our schedule. And the second day we'll pass by and we'll take you. That was happened. And the second day they passed by, they came, they wanted to take me and Feivel and Paul. I told them, we're not moving. We're not going. He says he cannot take anybody. For me and for Feivel and in you, I can account to the commandeer that you my sister-in-law, he's my brother. Yes. But for the rest, I cannot account. Yes. Okay, he says, let me go back to the Otrad, to the partisans battalion, and I'll explain to my commandeer, tell him that we meet where I found you, because they knew that Jews who flee the ghetto, they are there. They gave us, he went and they gave them permission. The second day they came and to bring us to the battalion, to the partisans, to meet the partisans. We were extremely happy, but they were so happy. We were dirty, we were hungry, but we were young. So young, and they are so Jewish people. They had all the trust in the Jewish people. The Jewish partisan was the most trusted partisan, because they knew that the Russian people who came from the villages, from the town, were spies. They didn't have a lot of trust in them. But to the Jewish partisan, they trusted them everything. That's why our life in the partisan began.
Yeah. Excuse me, this is a good point at which to stop.
Okay.
I want to continue with your story.
Okay.
I don't want to leave it go. Can you come back at another time and finish the story for
Another
us?
day.
I know, it's tough. I don't think anybody would like it, but we can't just rush through it. It's got to be told. So if it doesn't have to
And
be.
it'll be done today too.
Well, I have a class. I
have a class.
can't. This is the only time we have, and if we can do it at another time, it would be very, very useful. I don't want to just leave it like this. If you can do it,
I would.
You brought us
I
so.
would want to, but how am I going to come here?
Well, can Beryl? Oh, here we go. So tell us about Anatoly.
Anatoly was sentenced to death. And years later he told us that as he was walking out, at the door was sitting one commissar and asked him what he would like to, his last word to say. He says, I don't have anything to say, but I have some medals from the partisans, and I would like to send those medals. He was afraid to say that he has a brother, because he knew that in Russia, if you was no good, then the whole family would suffer.
Yes.
That he said, all those medals, I would like them to send to my town, to Pruzhany. He says, you know, I don't see in the case no mention of medals. He says, yes, I have the medal for Czerczewska, and I had the red cross, the red zvezda, and I had this and this. He says, no, sign this piece of paper. He says, and the piece of paper was nothing. Just sign the piece of paper. He says, what did I have to lose? This signature and what this man, the commissar was there, changed his death sentence for life of prison. He was sent to Przysiolok, Norilsk, Krasnoyarski Krai, this is, and the North Pole was sent. He came there, we lost track, we didn't know where he is. One day...
Did you know, though, that he was alive?
We didn't know that he's alive, we didn't know anything. But we tried to, I wrote a letter to Stalin. And we got an answer. I don't know if Stalin read the letter, but he came in from there. That he was in Russian. Pravilno obsudен, жалобы. It means that he was sentenced, accurate, that's without regret, no mercy. Okay. We knew that it's no sense of looking at him. In the meantime, happened like this. I have here two sisters from before. One sister came here in 1929, and one sister came 1938. And they sent papers for me to come to the United States. In the meantime, a lawyer from Moscow came to Pruzhany. And he was staying in my house. As I told you before, my house was like a house that everybody who came was coming. It was a big house already by then, and we were the youngest people and with a family. And then I was telling him the story. What's happened, that we lost track about the brother. We don't know. We know that he got lost. And we got papers. he said to us like this, you know, people, you know, into what you're looking at, you'll be very soon where your brother is, I assume. You better try to run away from here. Mm-hmm. In meantime, a family in Pruzhany, which we knew very well, got a letter. Their son was sent to Siberia because he was collaborating with the Germans. And he wound up in this place where my brother Anatoly was. He sends a letter to his parents and says, guess who is with me? Brydbord's son. That means Brydbord's son is with me. Tuvia Brydbord is with me, and he doesn't want to write to his brother. He knows that his brother is there because he's afraid. You can tell the brother. When we got the news, we wrote a letter ourselves there. We sent them, I remember, we made a package. I got a package, a care package from the United States, and it was over there lard. It was fat. We took this can of fat, of the lard, this and some dry fruit, and we sent this package to him. Later in the years, he told us that he got this package, and this little bit of fat kept them alive. He shared with the guard. After, when this lawyer told us that we should run, we tried to arrange papers, and the same law that we still Polish citizens, that we can go to Poland. It wasn't so easy. I'm not going to go into it because it's unbelievable how we escape. We had to do our papers alone. We false all the papers because the government didn't want to give us already papers. It was already after the start of
limitations.
Yes, but we did. We ran away. We came. A friend of us in Pruzhany helped us. In later years, I was wondering if he didn't suffer on account of us, because we heard that he was sent to Siberia. Yes. I couldn't meet him. I knew that he's in Israel. In the time when I wanted to see him, he was already, by that time he was dead. He came from Russia and he was dead, not too long ago. When we found each other, we wrote to each other, and I told them, the minute when I'll know that you are in Israel, I'll come to visit you. But when he came, in a short while, he died. But we escaped. We came, the minute we came on the Polish ground, in Brześć nad Bugiem, when we crossed the border, we heard again the same old Polacks. Look, Żydzi tu znowu, parszywe Żydzi przyjechali. It means that the stinky Jews are back. Right away, this was our hello. We came, from there we went to Lodz. In Lodz was the biggest already population of Jews from all over. We came, we signed up, and we didn't stay. We stayed with some friends, with what left also with us and the partisans. They had a little room. We stayed with them maybe a week or two, and then we went to Szczecin. In Szczecin was the point where everybody was smuggling to the American zone to Berlin. We came there, we smuggled, we got in touch with the people who were doing the smuggling. You had to pay them a certain amount of money. By this time, my sister sent me money from the United States. I should have the money to pay them. And we paid, and the three of us and other people, they took a military truck, and we had to go. The journey is supposed to take 2.5 hours. But unfortunately, we didn't come. We didn't come to Berlin. In the middle of the road, the truck broke down. And we had to, and it's winter, it was January 47. And two people were on the middle of the road, were between Berlin and Szczecin. One person, she was among those leaders who were the smugglers. She went to Szczecin, and one went to Berlin to catch some help for us. In meantime, we stayed the night the second night, it was my daughter and another small child. The little boy died from the cold, and we didn't have any food. We didn't take with us food because the journey should take only 2.5 hours, and they begged us not to take anything, not to take with us a lot of things. And we being partisans and everything, Paul went out and made from snow a little bit of water, and I gave to, at night, one of the girls was yelling, Heike, see if your child is alive. And I was sleeping. I started to shake her, and she woke up and she started crying. With us was a woman, my best friend, with whom we was all the time together, Hane and Mendel Kaganovich. They are the people who live now in Seattle. And she was pregnant, and my daughter was very close with her because we lived all the time since we ran away from Russia. Together, in one room we lived all the time together. She didn't even know which is the mother, which is not the mother. And as we was, it already was the second day, we didn't know what to do. A car was coming from Szczecin. They took this pregnant woman, my daughter, and another woman who was a wife from one of the people who were helped to smuggle us to. 4 people went with this taxi, and I'm so happy. I said, and they said, we are going now to Berlin, and we'll go to the French zone because this is going to be the closest, and from there we'll send another truck to pick you up. Oh, and I'm talking to Paul, I says, Paul, it's already an hour. They're probably already in Berlin, and because she left even without shoes. The way I was holding her, the way they took her, and she went. We stayed the whole day, and that's already 2 days and 2 nights. And the third day, we see a truck coming from Berlin, from the side. And they coming in, and I said to the guy, I said, Mishka, and how is my daughter? He looked at me, the way he looked, my heart fell through. I knew something is wrong. He says, they got caught. The car with Boris, Hanka, and Rivale, and they got caught by the Russian. Police who were guarding the border. I couldn't believe. I says, and here I'm thinking that she's we came to Berlin. I don't have to tell you how my heart and my Paul, we didn't know. And we decided one thing. If the Russian took her, all of them, all the 4 of them, and they send them back to Russia, that we don't have now any choice that to go back to Russia, no matter what kind of a consequences is going to be. They'll send us to Siberia, they'll send us, but at least they'll give us my daughter back. We came back to Berlin. From the French zone, they put us to the American zone right away in Schlachtensee. In Schlachtensee, right away, we went to the American embassy, to the chaplain of the camp, and every channel, every place, the chief of rabbi, and everybody will start looking for my daughter, and the 4 people who were with her. We couldn't hear any news. After 3 weeks, news came back from Szczecin that finally they let them out, and they sent them back to Szczecin. In a week, and later they came, my daughter and my friend Hanka came back. As a matter of fact, after she came back, a week later she gave birth to a daughter in Berlin. That's how I found my daughter back. When she came back, she was a sick, scared child. She didn't let us move any place. I remember then in Berlin, it was already different. I lived with another couple in one room, but we had bathrooms. When I had to go to the bathroom, she was after me running, not to leave her any place alone.
She was terrified.
She was petrified. But the years were going on, and we lived like this, 4 people in one small room. I had to move out from this room. That was our landslide. We knew each other from before. In life, one hand washes another, because when they came from Russia, they stayed in my house in Pruzhany too. I helped them. When being here in Berlin, they helped me. It was Lisa and
It's all right.
I forgot his name.
Her husband's name.
And after she was pregnant and she was expecting a baby, we had to move out. Now, we went to the housing authority. Oh yes, Lisa and Mayor Lifshitz. They were a very good friend of ours, and we had to move out. The housing authority gave us, people already start to move out. Immigration starts to go. A lot of people were going in the Aliyah through Cyprus to Israel. Mm-hmm. But only young people could go there, or couples without children. We signed up for the Aliyah because I had 2 sisters in Israel, and Paul had a brother in Israel, that we could go to Israel, but being that I have a little child, I couldn't go. Then slowly apartment starts to be empty. Then they gave me an apartment with another couple. The couple they were both survivors from concentration camp. They were from Lodz. They never went to Lodz after the war. They were in Berlin already since 1946. Since the minute the P camps organized, they were already there. And I came in 1947. And we were in Berlin till the blockade in 1949. Mm-hmm. In 1949, we came to Bayern, to Rosenheim. In the meantime, my brother-in-law from Siberia, we got word that he was free. Also through this exchange, the police exchange. The second time, his signature saved his life. Mm-hmm. They came one night and asked, who is a Polish citizen? He and a few others were Polish citizens. They signed up, they are Polish citizens. After a couple of months, he said one night they came, they took them, they didn't know where. They thought that they're taking him to another prison. But he said as they were going for months and months, from one prison till the other prison, then he knew that they are taking someplace. Till finally they told them that they're going back to Poland. When they came to the station in Brest-Litovsk, and he saw some partisans on the station, then he inquired about us. Then they told them that Paweł and Wierka udrali zrazu w Ameryku. That means that Paul and Wierka, that they right away, they already in the United States. But when he came to Lodz, he felt in a way happy and sad, mm-hmm. because he's alone, he doesn't have nobody, and happy for us that we're already in the United States. He went in Lodz to the joint, to the Hayas there, and he says that he has a brother and a sister-in-law gave the name that they are in the United States. They told them no, they're not in the United States. Here is their address. They are in a camp in a DP camp in Rosenheim. Here is the address, here is the apartment. We got a letter from him.
Yeah.
We couldn't believe. We were overjoyed. We were screaming. And we arranged for him 2 people. That's so many things to talk that even you cannot imagine what kind of an exchange of people. Here you, these people in this town brings you to the border, and another people will on this side will take you. And this kind of a life you lived. That wasn't anything normal. In normal circumstances, I don't even imagine that people would think about those things, how to do. Probably that's a necessity, the adventure of everything. Things are abnormal in those years, in those days. You live like...
The abnormal was the normal, I guess, for you.
In normal circumstances, you wouldn't even think to do those things.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessary.
Yeah.
When we got words that he's alive, and the only thing he was writing in the letter, I have to be away as far as can be from the Russians. And when we find out, we told them where to go to Szczecin, to the same people with whom we dealt, and then we told them to go.
He was not married, was he?
He wasn't married. He wasn't married. He's married now. And then we told him to go to Berlin and to go on Potsdamer Platz and to look for a certain person, Judel Schneider. He's a tall guy, and he'll know what to do. How you transfer to here. That's how he went. And he came to Berlin, and he walks on the street, and he goes out he says he looked for a Jew. He goes to a Jew, and he says, "Sag's mir," in Yiddish, "Sag's mir, wo ist der Judel Schneider?" He says, "I am the Judel Schneider." It's so funny. He says, "Tell me, who is Judel Schneider?" He says, "I am Judel Schneider." And he says, "Where are you?" He told him who he is, and he knew already. In no time, he came to us. He was not to recognize. I have some place here with me, a picture, but I'm not going to look now for it. The first thing he asked us, how far are you live from the Russian? I cannot stay too close to them because I'm afraid. He stayed with us for 6 months. From Rosenheim, we went to another DP camp, to Valheim. And from Valheim, he signed up and he went to Israel. Israel already was a state by then, and he went there. After all, he had another brother in Israel. The oldest brother, Aaron, was there. He was ready. By this time, he was married, and he came there.
So there were 3 brothers?
His 3 brothers.
Yeah.
One brother got killed in the woods.
Oh, okay.
There were 4 brothers. And this was the part he left out. And we were still staying in Valheim. From Valheim, we went to Feldafing, and from Feldafing, where we went to Fernwald. And this was our last stop. In Fernwald was our last stop. We signed up in 3 places to go. We signed up to the United States, Australia, and Canada. Wherever it's going to come first, then we're going to go. Life in camp, in the DP camps, it wasn't an easy life. It wasn't a certain life. Everybody wanted to go away. We wanted to live already. But at the same time, you didn't know. You were so... Sometimes I was thinking, what for did I run away from Pruzhany? I had a home. By this time, I had what to eat. We were quiet. Again on the valise. Again take the few pieces, the clothes, what I had. You didn't have anything. You didn't have any roots. Then when we got to go to the United States, oh, it was a thrill. And then I wrote to I had to go a little bit back. How did I get in touch with my sisters to the United States? When I ran away, from the ghetto. And my father was yelling after me, please be the one who survive. And maybe your destiny is going to be that you'll see your sister. Remember their address. And it was like in my mind that when I came back from the partisans and we start to communicate, the post started to come back and forth, I wrote them a letter. The exact address, the number of the house wasn't exactly, but the street. And when my sisters got this letter, my older sister remembered me, one who left in 1938, knew me exactly. But my other sister, when she left, I was only 6 years old. She said that my sister, Leah, she said in her dreams and in her mind, always she thought, after they knew what happened, she knew that nobody from the family is alive. But maybe, was always so outgoing and so determined, maybe I am alive. And when this letter came, she said she was overwhelmed. And then they start sending us money and packages and everything.
5 more minutes.
Then the point is, then we came in we signed up we got to come here. In 1951, on Labor Day, we arrived to the United States. The journey to the United States, I was sick right away on a boat. On a military boat we came. It wasn't a luxury boat. I was all the time sick. The journey was hard. All those years in the P camps weren't easy. But the journey here was worth it. It's a beautiful country. I gave birth to 2 more children. My husband worked only for 1 year, and then we went on our own. We made a nice living. If and when I'm sitting here and talking about this everything, will reach one person, and in a light that we Jews, not everybody was going to the slaughter. We were trying to fight, but not every time was possible within our means to fight. But it's worth it was here to sit and tell everything for one person who's going to listen and see those tapes.
Did you talk to your children about?
My children knows every little thing, because as soon as they could talk, we told them everything. My grandchildren know everything. One of my grandchildren was a head of a program in Camberley, private school here in Montclair. He made for them a Yom HaShoah, a Holocaust program. I took my grandson with me on the opening of the Holocaust Memorial in Washington. They always know I'm speaking for schools, for Talmud Torahs. I'm very much involved in the Holocaust library in Passaic, Clifton area. Because my story is a unique story. Not too many partisans survived, and it wasn't too many Jewish partisans from our town. They left the ghetto, but they not survived. I'm in touch with a few partisans still. We're calling each other. We are visiting each other.
From your group or generally?
No, from my group. With Mendel and Hannah Kaganovich, we are constantly in touch. We're coming to each other's simchas, when we're having affairs, have wedding, a bar mitzvah, we're close together.
Yeah.
And my husband, when it passed away, it was a tragedy for me, because with all the years, the worst years we spent together, and now, when it came to life, I'm alone.
How long is he gone?
4 years ago, my husband passed away. Yeah. And the children, my children, do know about everything. We have pictures, and they know They know, they like to know. Matter of fact, my youngest son is after me, we should go to Pruzhany.
Yeah.
I have a friend, he survived from concentration camp, and he was this year in Pruzhany. He said, somebody told me that, he said that we wouldn't recognize. There's nothing to go back to old things because everything is built up and you wouldn't recognize it. Yeah. As a matter of fact, our town is meeting every year. And the day, and it's usually between January the 31st and the beginning.
You mean the Landsmannschaft?
All the Pruzhaners, they survived from concentration camps. We are meeting, that's our yard site, that's our memorial. Yeah. Now we're having a big amount of people in Florida. In the same time, we're having in New York a memorial, and in Florida the same day, spontaneously. Yeah.
We have less than a minute, so I want to say thank you very much for coming here and for telling your
story
twice.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for being here. Yes. And as I say, maybe the future generation, somebody will recognize me by name. Maybe they know Pruzhany. Maybe they know I am from home Czerczewska, not a Brydbord. I married to a Brydbord. My family was very, very known. If I would go any place and I says that hier bin Simcha Leiser's a Tochter, it was enough to say this.
I hope so. I hope this will help in that regard. Thank you again very, very much.
Thank you.